Thank you, everyone. I'd just like to welcome Elizabeth Rimmer, who's the CEO of Law Care, Georgia Davies, Project Manager from the Conveyancing Association. We've got Stephen Ward from the CLC. I don't think he needs any introduction, does he? Tony and Richard, unfortunately, couldn't make it, who were advertised to come for COVID reasons. So Mark, I saw him this morning and I collared him. Because I wanted another practitioner on the session as well. So we're looking at managing client behaviours and supporting staff. And obviously Eddie said it's been a horrendous time, if we can put it that way. So 4 or 5 years, over the last 4 or 5 years, we've had a lot of different ways in which we communicate with clients. And I'd say over the last 18 months, 2 years, that's changed dramatically. I want to turn now to the panel and just get some feedback from them and what they do. So Elizabeth, can you just tell us a bit about what you do with Law Care, CEO of Law Care, and then basically how you and your staff have you experienced a lot more lawyers coming to you over this period?
So I'm Elizabeth from Law Care. Law Care is a charity that supports and promotes good mental health and well-being throughout the legal community in the UK. We've actually been going for almost 25 years. It's our 25th anniversary next year. And I think there's a tendency at the moment when there's been greater awareness and engagement around mental health, particularly through the last 18 months, to sort of think that some of the things we're talking about in the law are new, but they're not. They've been around for a long time. And listening to what you were saying, Victoria, about being in survival mode and sort of feeling we'll get to the end of the stamp duty holiday and then we'll see some clear space. I think lawyers operate like that every day, whether there's a pandemic or not. And that's one of the challenges we face about the way we work in the law. What we've seen at Law Care, we run a telephone helpline and support services for people working in the profession, whether you're legally qualified or you work in another capacity as a paralegal or you work in HR or business services. We're here for anybody that works in the profession. We've seen during the pandemic, not so much an increase in calls, a slight increase, but what we've seen is more people contacting us with COVID-related concerns. And that's really been about the changes in the way we work. So particularly during last year and the early part of this year, that social isolation people felt from being distanced from colleagues in the office, sense of feeling overwhelmed, challenges around maintaining the boundaries between working at home, that work-life balance, where does the day begin and where does the day end? And I think what we've seen across the sector, sort of backed up also by ONS data, for example, the legal sector has been booming through the pandemic. People are working longer hours than they ever have done before. And that's been one of the things that's been coming through to us through our support channels. But on the positive side of that, I think what we have had during COVID is an opportunity to really reflect on the way we work, what we want from work, and the opportunities we have as we emerge from this post-COVID decade, and we will come out of the pandemic at some point, this is a real opportunity now to start rethinking, I think, some of those ingrained working practices in the law that can undermine our mental health and well-being and ultimately can undermine the services that we deliver to our clients. So I think we've got some great opportunities ahead to really start doing things better for the people that work in our sector.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Georgia, so the Be Kind, We Care initiative actually was developed, wasn't it, because of bad behaviours of clients, and then it went out into the industry, didn't it? So what are you doing in terms of that, and what initiative are you taking on?
Yeah, exactly. So the Conveyancing Foundation launched the Be Kind, We Care initiative at the start of the year, and it really was a response to reports from conveyancers about horrible comments that they were having from clients, from fellow professionals, and even sometimes co-workers, and was really a call to action to say, look, let's be mindful of what the other people might be going through. We're all in a very stressful situation here. Let's just take a minute and think about what we're saying to other people. So it very much started as kind of like a call to action. But then we kind of had a little bit of a thought about it and thought, actually, it's like Elizabeth said, the pandemic has certainly exacerbated mental health issues and exacerbated the situation that we're in, but conveyancing has always been a very stressful environment, a stressful job to work in. So what can we do as an industry to promote good mental health and well-being within the industry? So we've gone about that a number of ways. We've been working with Lawcare actually, and agents together, the Mindset Foundation, and pooling together the great resources that are already out there and just sharing them within our industry. Through our newsletters, we've got a resource hub on our website, and we've also been hosting some events to help those that are employers, to help those who work within the industry. We did a great one on stress management, how to identify stress, what we can do, what the practical steps we can take to manage stress in this, because it is a stressful environment. And we also had a great session in July where we got people together from, it's actually Angela and Richard who are meant to be here today, together with an estate agency firm in London, and also Martin Roberts, who works at Lloyds Bank, to say, okay, well, what are you guys doing? There's no point us all, working in a vacuum. What are you doing to help, improve staff welfare, and how can we all use that information, all take the same back to our own organisations? So we've had some really positive feedback, and we're hoping to continue with it, but it's all about raising awareness and just sharing the resources that are already out there to help people and help their staff as well.
Yeah, I think both initiatives are really good for Lawcare and Be Kind We Care, so thank you for that. We've heard obviously about managing clients, and Matt actually referred to it on his session, a previous slide, and that, and talked about educating the clients. One of the things we've definitely found is that clients, I would imagine everyone in this room sends out a process, the stages, the frequently asked questions, but clients don't read it, and particularly now they don't. They seem to have this Amazon effect that, they'll say what date things will happen. They want tracking 24/7. It seems that they've had the control over it. Is there a bigger education piece here that the regulators can do that, perhaps with the legal ombudsman, to stop these sorts of complaints getting to the legal ombudsman?
This is a really important strand, in fact, because most clients can't be bothered to understand the process. They don't want to engage in that. We did some research, it goes back quite a while ago now, but we did some research probably 6 years ago with clients, people who'd recently been through the conveyancing process, and they said, oh, well, I don't really want to understand it all, it's for the lawyers to work that out, but just tell me what I need to do next to keep the transaction moving. What paperwork do I need? What do you need from me? Or what questions you need to look at and answer. So I think that makes it very challenging for everybody, as we know, to engage clients on these sometimes difficult and sometimes from their point of view boring details, and help them understand the value of what you're doing, the importance of what you're doing for them, and get them to engage with it in a constructive way. So we've been doing quite a lot. Matt probably mentioned, I'm sorry I wasn't here for that his department have buying and selling guides up on their websites. We have our own version of that, a slightly sort of streamlined version of that on our website. We regularly place articles in What Mortgage to try to reach people who are at the point of instructing a lawyer, because they're thinking about moving home mortgages, to explain to them how to engage with you, how to choose a conveyancer, and how to get the best out of that process. And of course, with the other regulators, we run something called Legal Choices, and we've put a lot of money into this website, which is precisely about educating consumers when they need that education and when they're receptive to it, because they're about to use a lawyer, or they're identifying they have a legal problem, or as in this case, they need a conveyancer, on how to do that and how to engage in the legal process, whatever that might be. I think from your point of view, though, I would say that when I look at and we don't deal with service complaints, of course, the legal ombudsman does, but a good number of people will come to us and we refer them on to the legal ombudsman. And I think very, very often a common thread I see there is, yes, there's a lack of understanding of the process, but there's perhaps also that the client's expectation hasn't been managed as well as it might have been. And sometimes that's despite them having been provided with all the information. And you've probably heard me say this before, but there's a tension there for all of you, I think, because I, as the regulator, expect you to convey quite a lot of information to your client when they engage you. And the challenge that I've kind of left you with, we have left you with, is how to convey that in an engaging way, in a way that they will understand and be able to act upon. So I think the other bit of the puzzle is in those communications at the early stages and throughout the process. What do you really need to communicate in the letter or in the email? What can be presented in different ways? How can you simplify things so that they are understandable by non-lawyers and so on? I think thinking about those things and how you present those communications, so not, the 15-page letter, like the Amazon terms and conditions where we all click, because consumers sign, there's less of engagement without really reading them, let's face it. How are you going to get them to focus on the important points that are going to come back and cause problems from you if they don't really get that? And obviously, in the very wrongly named SDLT holidays, we saw that expectation management was particularly important then, of course. The deadline for completion is always the thing you need to worry about, and people will get it into their heads that, if they say, oh, we want to move for Christmas, and you sort of say, well, yeah, we'll see about that, you might be able to do that, but, be very clear that they're not going to move before Christmas, because their expectation is set the moment you don't say it's not going to happen. You're, as far as they're concerned, you're committed to a move before Christmas. So it's about getting those ideas across clearly and in a succinct way so that they'll engage with that. As I say, we're doing quite a lot on consumer education. The real challenge is that people don't engage with what they need from a lawyer until the moment they need that, and that's true for conveyancing, it's true, of course, for criminal law and family law and all the rest of it. And the difficulty that we have a lot of the time is that getting headspace of the client as they're moving, as they're about to sell their house or buy their house, is really difficult, not least because conveyancers are paying a lot to get top results in search engines when people are saying, I need to move house. So think about ways that when they're looking at your site or your marketing materials, that you're starting to educate them even then about how the process works. And that's part of what our transparency informed choice initiative is about as well. Sorry, that's a very long answer to your question.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you on that. It was interesting though, because it is about managing client expectations, and it's about our less experienced colleagues that we're training them to do that, and that's a constant thing with us. Some of the clients go beyond, Stephen, and one of the things I was taught as a young lawyer is that it's harder to actually disinstruct a client than to get a new instruction. What can the regulators do to help us with those particular clients and keep us within that regulatory framework? And I think someone's posed a question there. There's a real fear of the client complaint culture. We often do a good job but get threatened with the legal ombudsman. How can the regulators support us better?
Well, yes. I really want the number of complaints that get referred to the legal ombudsman to go down. The number of complaints that go about CLC firms is low, actually, 250 a year on average for the last 3 years. But the Leo spends £2,000 investigating each complaint, and the highest award it generally makes is about 200 quid. So judge for yourself if that's proportionate. I'd encourage everyone in this room to do all you can to prevent referrals to Leo. I think there are two parts to the question, really. Is it how to deal with the very unreasonable client that you want to disinstruct, and also perhaps how to avoid the referral to Leo. And I'm afraid in both cases, it comes down to obviously the expectation management, but when complaints come in, where I have seen firms get into difficulty with complainants, it's generally because, and I accept that, you will often get complaints that are unreasonable and all the rest of it. Even if a complaint's unreasonable, it's really important to respond to it in a calm manner, which generally happens, but not to take the complaint personally. This is where I see lawyers get into difficulty, firms get into difficulty, is if they feel offended by the complaint. And then the kind of red mist descends. And instead of thinking, how am I going to resolve this issue? How am I going to make this unhappy customer into a happy customer? Not always possible, I know. But how am I going to do that? It's possible most of the time. And without my emotions becoming involved. And that's really difficult because we're all human and people annoy us. But an easy way to do that is if the complaint is about you, give it to somebody else to deal with so they can be less sort of passionate about it, and put yourself in the complainant's shoes as well. Very often, and it sounds banal and boring, but a quick apology early on will save a lot of pain later on. You all know this. I'm teaching grandmothers to suck eggs here, but my big tip would be as dispassionate as possible. And don't allow yourself to be riled by an individual. And talking about the very unreasonable clients, and I have in my past as well, dealt with quite a few of those, because understandably, when the very unreasonable clients end up talking to the regulator very often because they're never satisfied. They keep on pushing and pushing and pushing, and they're never satisfied with an answer. Then I'm afraid it just comes down to patience and knowing when to draw the line. So on the disinstruction point, really, I suppose, the similar point for me would be when I decide, no, this client is vexatious because I have told them everything I possibly can tell them, I've given them every solution that I can give them, I've explained why their complaint is unfounded or has been dealt with satisfactorily. So it's understanding when you've done everything you can possibly do correctly with that client, and then you draw the line. And going to the point about staying within the legal framework, if you can demonstrate that you've done that in respect of an unreasonable client, and you disinstruct them, well then you'll be fine with the regulator, because we'll see that you've treated them fairly and properly, and you've been through all the right processes. But it's easy to say that here, sitting calmly in a room of friends. It's more difficult to do when that person is on the phone and you're at the end of the tether because they're taking up a lot of your time and it's all a lot of nonsense. So the main thing is, in all of these situations, just keep as calm and detached as you can do, whilst empathising with the client and understanding where they're coming from.
I don't think this bad behaviour is going away from clients. I don't know if anyone has a different opinion. And we're in this new world of working, whether it's hybrid or not. What are you doing in your practice moving forward to help with staff and retention and things?
Sometimes they got Matt to phone them just out of the blue, and they'd give Matt a list. Matt's my brother's fellow director. He's the one that pitched my name in Victoria's mind. So Matt would just phone him out of the blue and just say, how you doing? I'm just ringing just to check how you are. Not talk about work, nothing. Just ask how it's going and so on. And these calls were worth their weight in gold, and they really helped to pull some people back from the edge. And what we've done now, we've moved on from that. So at our directors' meetings every month, one of the items on every agenda is who needs a card this month. So people might have, just got over some cancer scare, or they might have lost a relative, or they might have family recovering from some problems. So we'll send a card from all the directors. Matt will then get a list of people he should ring that month because so-and-so is a little bit wobbly. I don't tend to deal with people, so I get the fees side. So I get to send emails to people that have done well on fees or that have got really good Trustpilot reviews. But this is a regular thing now going forward. We are looking out for people, and with more people working at home, that is it's become more of an issue. When they're in the office, you can monitor them a bit better. And one of the comments there is about warning signs if people are working remotely. I think partly because of that, we've encouraged people more back into the office. Throughout this whole thing, we did try and work with people as individuals. We recognised there's people who didn't want to come near us for 6 months and people who didn't want to spend a single day working from home, and we got everything in between. So we tried to work with that, which wasn't easy at times. I know some businesses decided on the correct way and just imposed it on everyone. but we found that actually everyone's an individual and they've all got separate needs. So we'd work with it, but similarly, last summer when we were coming back to people, were going to be coming back into the office more. The ones that wanted to be at home more, we'd have a chat with them and say, look, you might want to treat this as a bit like a keeping in touch day when you're coming back from maternity leave. You know, it's April now. You're going to meant to be in the office in June, July. Why don't you just come in for a couple of hours next week and come in for a day the week after and build it up gradually. Basically encouraging people to get back on the horse. And the situation we've got now is almost all the staff work in the office 4 days a week, do 1 day a week from home. And we found that our conveyancing operation is a collaborative team-based working. And we found that having most of the people in the office most of the time is best for that. Because if a client's just mouthed off at you on the phone and you put the phone down and you swear, I'll try not to on the microphone, but you'll swear and your colleagues around you will say, oh yeah, you know, and you have a bit of banter about it and it just brings you down. But if you have that same conversation and you're sat in your back bedroom and you put the phone down, a little bit of you dies inside. It's horrible. So for the operations where we've got people working collaboratively together, we find most of the time, most of the people in the office works. I accept that some people, if they're doing property reports all day long, I can see that more home working would work for them. But again, I'd like to see more balance with them. I think that's all I wanted to say on it.
Yeah, I'd agree with that as well, Mark, because we did that. I head up a remortgage team, a large remortgage team, and also the conveyancing. And with the remortgage team, it was very important that we brought everybody together. So I said, as a business, we said, right, minimum 3 days in the office. So I made it that everybody was in the same 3 days, and it just motivated. And those people that were struggling, that didn't even realise they were struggling whilst working from home, it's reinvigorated them. It's really helped their mental health. It often feels that knee-jerk reaction to stress from doctors and scared employers is take time off. Is that actually the best way? I found this in our business, and I really didn't think it was the best way, because I don't think it helps that member of staff, because they know what they're coming back to. They know that that's additional pressure for their colleagues that have taken on that work and covering them for that 2 weeks it normally is. So does anyone want to pick that question up, any of the Mark's?
Sorry, we have had experience of this. I should preempt this by, I'm certainly not an HR expert, and in our firm I'm not allowed to speak to some staff because of who I am. But having said that, I know that people who do know about HR, where we've had this experience, they will try and get a dialogue with the person. But it's a real tightrope you're treading here, because you're not trying to overrule what the doctor's said, but quite often the doctor's taking the easy route out. But we'll try and get a dialogue with them and say, look, can we at least have a meeting and talk through the bits of the job that are causing you the most anxiety, and ask if we could maybe, could we get to work somewhere else, or just give you half a day in the office? Could you try a little bit from home or whatever? But it depends on the person, and you have to be led by them. But we've definitely found one where the doctor keeps signing her off, and it's the last thing she needed, because her personal issues would just stew and get worse and worse. And actually we've managed to coax her back in, and now she's back in, she's firing on all cylinders. It's good, but if we'd left it, she'd still be being signed off. But it's I think it's a difficult judgment call.
Absolutely. Elizabeth, do you want to pick up on this?
I was just going to add to that. I think it's a really interesting question, and the real issue really is, our approach should be, we don't want to be pulling people out of the river when they're drowning. We want to stop them falling in the first place. And what you were talking about, Mark, is supervision and regular catch-ups. In our Life in the Law study, which I catastrophically failed to mention, 1,700 legal professionals from the UK responded to that. It's a robust piece of work. There are going to be some academic papers coming out of it. We asked people what was the most valued support in the workplace to support your mental health, and overwhelmingly the answer was regular catch-ups with colleagues, that opportunity to sit down and talk to someone. Because supervision, catch-ups, appraisals, whatever you call them, are that opportunity to sit down talk to somebody, find out if they're struggling, see if there's some early warning signs, take action to prevent them from falling into a position where they need to be signed off work. So I think that's a really strong message coming out of our research, and also the experience of COVID, looking at that other question, how do you know if someone's struggling? Well, actually, you need to be, if you're regularly talking to the people you manage and supervise, then you will be better able to pick up some of those concerns. And supervision provides that place for people to build their confidence, raise problems that they're experiencing. And it can't be, I think, underestimated how important that is. The challenge we have in the legal profession is we often expect people to do good supervision and management on top of a day job. We're not trained. Less than half the people with management responsibilities in our survey had any formal training in how to manage others or mental health. So I think that's another big area of work we need to look at. Because ultimately, as we all know, the greatest asset in our work are our people. And if we don't safeguard people's mental health and well-being, it leads to some of the challenges where people are being complained about, their competence is undermined, and we see all those sorts of things we see in the headlines about some of the worst aspects of working in the law. And through better people management and supervision, we've got a good opportunity, I think, of addressing some of that.
Do you want to add anything, Georgia? Or?
I was just going to add from the point of view of the regulator as well. I'm about to sound probably heartless, but it's important for your business as well that your people are mentally healthy and happy, because if they're under a lot of stress, if they're not being supervised properly and assisted, they can make all sorts of odd decisions and the wrong decisions and put your business at risk. Think of the things we've seen in the legal press recently about junior lawyers who have, fiddled billing because they didn't want to fess up to having made mistakes, or that kind of thing. You don't want to be out there with those kinds of risks in your business, because people are under a lot of pressure and are unable to see things clearly or make the right ethical decisions, because we're all worse decision makers under stress.
Thank you. Thank you. And I think this is a topic that we'll be discussing for many months, really. I don't think it's gone away with the end of the stamp duty holiday. I think it's here to stay, really. And I know it's not just in law. I talk to other people like my hairdresser and people like that, and they're experiencing it in the retail world. So I think it is a change in society that is probably, unfortunately, here to stay. So we need to look at ways of managing it and helping our teams and our staff and keeping good business. So thank you very much to the panel. Thank you.